Welcome back to another video. So let's see how we can handle large 3D files within Blender. This will be a case study with 64 gigabytes of RAM. Now the case study model will be this one. So we see over here the Squid Game characters, and each of those will have a 3D scanner. So we see over here Leo, Arctic Spider, and Eva. Now this will be the 3D model. I will also put the link in the video description so you can follow along. So to get started, I will be within Blender. I will select everything, delete everything, and I will enable the statistics over here. So we see that the scene is empty, so we have no objects. And I will start load the model. So I'll go to File, Import. The file format will be OBJ. Within Downloads, I will select the file. We're gonna see over here that the file size will be 0.4 G, so this will be around 425 megabytes. I will have that imported. Now, since this is a 3D scan, we're gonna see that it will be loaded at a larger scale. So let me just press S and type in from the numpad 0.001. And we're gonna see this will be the model. I will also enable the viewport shading. So we're gonna see how that will influence the memory. So currently Blender with this model loaded is at around 6 GB of RAM, as we can see over here. I will also select the model and have it rotated on the y-axis, on the x-axis, minus 90 degrees. So this will be the case study model. We're gonna see the vertices count, so 1.2 million. And this will be the memory used. Now, let me just select this and I will press Shift D. So this will create a new copy and the models will not be linked. So I press Shift D and on the x-axis I will move it over here. And we're gonna see how this has jumped around 200 megabytes up. So let me do that once again over here, and I will also duplicate this on the y-axis twice. So we're gonna have the same model loaded 5 times. We have a total of 20 million triangles. And if I will check over here the memory use, we're gonna see will be around 6.4 gigabytes. So let me just select everything and press Shift D and move everything over here. And once again over here on the y-axis. And let me just do the same on the x and y once again. So we see now that we have a total of 62 million triangles. If I will jump within the resource, we're gonna see that this will already occupy 22 gigabytes of RAM. So let's just continue this. I will now select everything. Now I will duplicate everything. So once on the x-axis, we're gonna see that Blender will require a little bit of time to select and copy everything. This will be with Shift D, and we're gonna see afterwards with Alt D. So both of these methods will copy the model, but we're gonna see the difference. We see that Blender is still currently not responding. But this should take our scene to around 120 million triangles. And let's see the resources. So we see that it's around 38 gigabytes of RAM within Blender. And we see over here the available RAM and in use and available RAM. So I'm sure that Blender will manage to process this. So we see currently we have 25 objects. We see that the RAM hasn't increased over here. So let's see, I will also move the laptop to be in performance, because currently this is set to on silent so you can hear me better, but I see that it's processing a little bit slower. So let's see if that will improve anything. So in terms of RAM memory, we see the same load over here, but in terms of CPU usage, we're gonna see that Blender is currently not responding. So is that this is a bottle cap mainly for the CPU and not for the memory over here. Maybe if I would have selected smaller amounts and have those copied, it would have been a lot better. But let's see if Blender will manage to process this. We see that the usage is not that high for the CPU, so okay, so we see that this has bottleneck Blender within that large duplicate. So I will just end task over here and I will redo this a different way. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so this will be the second attempt. As we can see over here within the process, we have the previous Blender process over here. So this is grayed out, it's no longer active, and it has been wiped from the memory. So we only have the default scene we see over here with 5.4 gigabytes of RAM. Now, when I will duplicate the models, I will now press Alt and D, and we're gonna see how this will be different. So Alt and D on the X, Alt and D on the Y, and Alt and D on the Y again. So I already have over here 5 models. If I will enable the statistics, we're gonna see 2.5 million triangles for this. And we're gonna see over here that the memory use will be only 5.2. So that means even though I will select now everything and press Alt and D and grab those on the X, Alt and D again on the X, Alt and D, and now have those again moved over here on the Y. So I don't want to have those deleted. I also want to grab those over here. Alt and D and move them over here. Now, if I will select over here, we're going to see that the number of triangles in this case will remain the same. So almost 5 millions. So even over here within the resource, we're going to see that the memory use will still remain low. So that means now I can select everything. And if I will have all of this duplicated like this, let's see on the z-axis, so regardless of the amount of elements that I will add, those will not increase the resource over here, so the resource usage. Again, if I will go over here, it just slightly increased a little bit, but in regards of the geometry that is being loaded, even though we have 125 models, we're gonna see that the total triangle count will be low in this case. So this will be using Alt-D in order to duplicate our models. Let me just select all of those and go again with Shift-D, since that will add additional geometry and triangles within the scene. So we're gonna have this Squid Game model, Shift-D. Let me just move it like this so it will be faster. So we have the model loaded 5 times, 20 million. Shift-D and grab it on the Y. We're gonna have 24 millions. And within Blender, this will be around 11 gigabytes of RAM. Now select everything, Shift-D, have it moved. We see it's a little bit laggy, but it managed to process. So 49 millions. If I will check over here, 18 gigabytes of RAM. Within the viewport, I can feel that this is a little bit more sluggish. So as I turn around over here, I see that the frame rate has slightly decreased. So let me just select that again, Shift-D, grab it once again over here. So we are at a total of 62 million triangles, and this will be all the way to 22 gigabytes of RAM. Let's move this one once again, so 74 millions. Again, the computer is a little bit sluggish. 87 million triangles. Okay, now this will be close to 100 million triangles. And if I will check over here, we're gonna see that this will be around 32 gigabytes. So we see that if I don't try to duplicate a lot of model at once, Blender will manage to process this. Even though when I'm moving the copy over here, I will see that this will move a little bit slower. But we see all those characters being added, so all the way to 137 millions. I will duplicate this once again. So 150 millions, and if I will check over here, this will be close to memory in use. We see 42 gigabytes of RAM. So let me just try to reach to that cap, and let's see if Blender will again not respond when you're gonna reach that cap. So we see the triangle count. Okay, if I'm gonna try to do the copy, it will be a lot more sluggish, and you're gonna see a delay. So I already press the Shift D, and yeah, currently now we have not responding, and this currently to 59 gigabytes. So this should process. I will just slightly move my mouse over here because now we see a little bit of delay. So we see this has been already dragged to 41 meters. I will click it over there. Let me see if those models will appear over here, because I have a feeling that they have been copied. Yeah, we see them over there. So let me just move them on the y-axis. Okay, I don't have that selection anymore. And it's pretty close to that cap, because I see how sluggish this is. So let me just copy that once again. I don't want to grab that additional one, so I don't want to do some selections, just like that. Shift D, duplicate. This should take us to 200 million triangles, and now we are almost there. Grab it on the Y, move it along. And yeah, you're gonna have 61 gigabytes used within this scene. Let's try to go for that maximum amount of RAM memory currently available on this laptop. I'm just gonna click it over here because it's quite laggy and this will take quite a while. And now I will just press Shift D and have it duplicated and overlap on the existing one. But we're gonna see how that total triangle count will increase. So 2 to 4 within triangles. And yeah, we see over here for the committed RAM. I press once again, Shift D. And yeah, Blender has entered that not responding. But this not responding mainly generated by the lack of memory over here, if you want to see. So we still have around 2 gigabytes of available RAM memory, but yeah, Blender is struggling. 236, Shift D again. Yeah, and we now see that the free memory is no longer available over here, so we have this 249. Let's see if I will try to reach a higher amount, so around 300 millions, because now Blender will start to clear that RAM memory and have it stored locally. and it will start to attempt to free some memory over here. So we see that currently we have committed over here 80 gigabytes, even though the laptop only has 64. But we see over here that amount over here. Even though that, if you're gonna take a look over here on the working set, this will be 51 out of the total of 64. So let's just duplicate that again and again and again. So 3 times to 74. Yeah, I think this will be the bottleneck because it should add another copy, but we see how slow Blender will process. Okay, so maybe we can stretch a little bit more, but overall we're gonna see that with 65 gigabytes of RAM, we can have a scene, let's say roughly around 250 million triangles. But again, keep in mind that you should use those specific techniques. So you should use, for example, Alt-D when you copy this and not Shift-D. And yeah, again, within a large scene, it would be highly recommended to have those sorted into various layers and have them hidden when you are not working with them. And that will optimize the scene. But we see that Blender can process a high amount of triangles. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this kind of content. We see over here the comment from Brandon. I got 45 million faces and 76 million vertices in my current project, and my 64 gigs of RAM is somewhat holding up. Okay, so let me know in the comment section what is your opinion regarding this and what is the largest scene that you have loaded within Blender. So if you enjoy this kind of content, I will position a similar video over here on the left side and a subscribe button to the right. So that's it. Thanks for watching.